Right, guys, time for a bit of fun here. Get your 5 in as well. Now, we're going to put forward 5 players that have had the best debut seasons in the Premier League. Now, there's one player that's pretty obvious here, Erling Haaland. Believe it or not, made it into all of our lists. So we thought a bit boring if we just keep talking about Erling Haaland and how good he is. You know that by now, so we're going to move on from that. He did very well, okay? Let's think about the other 5 here, just to, put a spotlight on some of these other players. Tony, let's come to you first with a Man United pick. Someone who people... Yeah, Tony's a Man United fan. A lot of people doubted this guy. Sandro Martinez is your first pick in terms of his debut season in the Premier League.
Yeah, 100%. And what you just said goes to it. A lot of people doubted him. I was the one that even doubted him as well. I thought when we signed him, he wasn't going to be a centre-back. I thought he's played DM before.
Where did you stand on that at the start of the season? Were you too small?
I never said he's too small because I grew up watching Fabio Cannavaro, right? Who was even smaller. So I'm not a massive fan of saying our Premier League centre backs have to be big and tall, but I did say it's going to be a weakness, and he's proven that it's not about the size of the dog; it's about the dog of the fight, or whatever. Basically, as long as you got that, I butchered that. But
the size of the dog in the fight, it's the size of the fight in the dog.
That's it. As long as you got that dog in you, it's fine. And that's Lisandro Martinez in a nutshell. If we look at his stats, 1.2 interceptions per 90, 2 tackles per 90, 3.6 clearances per game, and Man United just look a 10 times better team.
That's it. I think you can talk through his stats with certain players, and they're important, but I think sometimes it can be difficult for defensive players. I think the tenacity that he has rubbed off on the rest of the group. And big games, I think he's called a pit bull for a reason, isn't he? He's got that tenacity, and I think it's been crucial. And they've been really strong, Man United, at the back as well. I've got a Man United pick for mine. My 5, Casemiro has to go in.
Obviously.
Literally, I come here every week and talk about how great Casemiro is. But I think, look, I can't get the Carabao Cup final out of my head with him. I just think he came in, and the problem for Man United was the midfield. And what he's allowed in terms of being that single pivot for the team, the way that he reads the game, his ability on the ball, which I remember you saying, Nubaid, far better than people thought. I think myself as well. And when you see him just putting out fires and then playing simple passes, creating goals, can score headers as well. Great in the air, aerial duel success rate 67%. Tackles and interceptions very, very high every single game. Leads by example. And that big thing of someone coming in and he's thinking, maybe he's not got the hunger anymore because he's won all this stuff at Real Madrid. Could have been I remember tweeting, this feels like a little bit like Schweinsteiger.
Yeah.
And it's not been that. I think he's been absolutely amazing in his debut season. And there was, for different players, there's different kinds of pressure, and for him there was an element of pressure there, and he just calmly has just batted that way, and I just think he's been amazing. Nubaid, give us your first pick.
I've gone with Marcus Tavernier. I think
this is a great shout, and I'm really annoyed I didn't put it in mine.
When I put it in, I had a feeling you'd put it in because he's exactly your sort of player. He's come from the Championship. He's now in the Premier League. He's doing very well. He's back Solanke. He's back Bamford.
Rightly so.
These are your guys. But I think Bournemouth look a much better side when he's fit. I think during the 6 or 7 games he was injured, they didn't win a single game. The moment he came back, I think they drew the first, won the second, drew the third, and then won again. They went on a bit of an unbeaten streak. 5 goals, 4 assists, 4 big chances created. But for me, it's more when you have a winger in your side, especially when you're right down there, you need players that let you breathe. He's got this brilliant appetite. If he picks the ball up, he takes his full back on, he gets you further up the pitch and win you a corner or a throw-in. I think when you're in the dogfight down there, he's got a lot of fight in his dog. So I really like him. I wouldn't be too surprised if there's a few other sides in the Premier League that make a move for him, especially if Bournemouth go down. I think he's a terrific footballer.
I think big thing for him is a couple of cracking goals in there, but also goals that have delivered points. I think that's the big thing for Bournemouth this year. You've had a fantastic season. That's the pick I should have picked, but I went with Gnonto, because I think Gnonto's been electric for Leeds, and he just sort of stuck out in my head. And you put me straight in terms of recently not been playing as much as he should do because he's such a great player, having such a great debut season. But I just think he's been absolutely electric for Leeds at times. And this, Leeds fans think they're down, and maybe they are. But the fact that they kind of got to this point, I think he is a big part of that. The numbers aren't wonderful, but for someone who we didn't know too much about, stepping in, young guy as well, I've been impressed with him. But I think Tavernier is a better shout, so well done there. Who's your next pick, Tony? Let's go with an Arsenal centre-back. Do you like your centre-backs, do you?
I do. I feel like centre-backs have really had really good seasons.
Yeah.
I'm not going to do the song, but Saliba, 100%. I feel like
Do the song.
No, I'm joking. But anyway, yeah, William Saliba. He's come in. He was signed for Arsenal 3 years ago. Had 2 loan spells, and everyone was thinking, does Arteta really like this guy? Is Arteta just shipping him off to France? Had a really good season in France. Has come in and has been electric. Besides Gabriel, I feel like there's some Arsenal fans out there who probably might think if he never got injured, they'll probably still win the title. You never know. Like
I agree with you. I think they're in a much better place because in terms of Arsenal bottling the league, it's not about that Man City game. Like I think they would have lost that game regardless. It's the other games, and those other games they would have been able to navigate, I think, a lot better with Saliba, who, for someone so young, he just provides so much calm for that team. I think he's been absolutely fantastic. He's right up there in my team of the season this year, alongside another player that I want to talk about. I didn't think about him in terms of his debut season just because he'd been there a couple of seasons. So I went with Botman. I think you have to have a Newcastle defender in there, and I think for them to, certainly someone who's been signed this season, came in, solid amount of pressure on him, I think, in terms of being a big money signing, still young, had done obviously brilliantly in France, but has come in and just, he's got a bit of the Ruben Dias about him in terms of, like, I think he kind of likes defending, but it's not what he's all about. Got a bit of class about him as well. I just think he's had a really, really solid season, as have Newcastle as well. So I had to put him in there. Nubaid, another Newcastle player?
Alexander Isak. I've spoken about this guy so many times. He's such a good footballer. 10 goals, but I've got written here 108 minutes scoring frequency. I believe that means he scores every 108 minutes.
That is what that means.
He's one of these players that I just think, as a defender, you do not want to come up against him. He's got everything to his game. I think it was the United game, actually, where he provided the assist before the assist. I think he took it down off his chest, held off one of your centre-backs, one of the guys who's in this list, dropped it into midfield, ran into the box. He's just one of these forwards that I think has everything to his game, absolutely everything, and he's going some serious places.
He's got to stay fit for a whole season, hasn't he? That's the big thing here, I think.
If you're not fit,
you're not it, Nubaid. Nubaid learned this phrase this week off me, who I stole off someone else, but feel free to have it yourselves. One that we've both got, midfielder, who I think, obviously playing for a team that's really struggling in Southampton, but Lavia, I mean, the fact that Chelsea wanted to pinch him after a couple of games, I think speaks volumes. Gone from Man City to there, so there's a pedigree there. He's obviously been brought through in a very good academy, and just looks so comfortable in that midfield. I think being alongside someone like James Ward-Prowse is helpful, but I think defensively he looks like he reads the game really, really well. He's so young, and I think in terms of the ceiling of a footballer, I think he's got a really, really high ceiling. So I think it's one where you could have missed out on him in terms of a list like this, focusing on players at teams that probably get a bit more press. But I think he will move on to another side, you would imagine, with Southampton looking like they're going to go down, and I think he will be fantastic wherever he goes, and there's going to be a lot of teams going for him, and wouldn't be surprised if some of those teams are Champions League, European chasing teams, because he's been that good. Tony's next name on his list, it's another centre-back. Off we go, Tony.
Yeah, I know. I have a thing for centre-backs. Manuel Akanji from Manchester City. I feel like he's just come into this side and not looked out of place at all. He's been very versatile in the defence as well. Been playing left-back when he's needed to. And City have really good centre-backs as well. Obviously, you likes of Laporte, Diaz, and he just looks amazing. Just looks a part of that group as well. 0.6 interceptions per 90, 1.3 tackles per 90 as well. And I just look at that and I just think, you know what? Pep normally signs a centre-back and they're known for like their ball playing ability, but Akanji doesn't need to do that. He's just a defence first guy, and I feel like he's just put in a really good shift for City this season. Yeah,
I think the flexibility of him has been really impressive, because he comes in, you go, great centre-back, kind of chuck him on the pile. What about all these other guys? Are those other guys going to make way? As we've seen, he's kind of played right back. He played left back recently as well. I think the flexibility of him has been his kind of superpower that we weren't truly aware of. And yeah, just incredibly intelligent as a footballer, an absolute bargain as well, 15 mil from Dortmund. I'm going to go for a defender as well. There has to be a Brighton player here when we're talking about great players this season, because I think they've been one of the stories of it. And Estupiñán, for me, has been the cornerstone of that Brighton side in terms of how, especially someone like Matoma has been able to play this season. I think he's been fantastic, and I didn't expect him to be as good offensively as he's been. 4 assists so far this season, 5 big chances created, 1.4 key passes per 90. I think is the interesting stat there. And you spoke about it last week, Nubaid, how Brighton's XG this year is off the charts, and that essentially means they dominate games. And he's been a big part of that with those underlapping runs, smart runs at the right time, that open space and create width kind of in a reverse way sometimes for Solly March and for Matoma as well. And yeah, I just think him coming from Villarreal, I remember the semi-final against Liverpool, I thought he's a good player, but I thought he was probably more of a defensive fullback. So to come in and we now look at it and go, Cucurella isn't a good footballer. He was a really good footballer, and that was a big hole to fill. And he's come in and he is in my team of the season. I think he's been absolutely amazing. So for him to come and do as well in what's quite a complex system, I would imagine for Brighton, has been very, very impressive. Nubaid, let's head over to Liverpool, shall we?
That's
a sneak one in there, didn't you?
Yeah, it's a sneaky one. But I do actually think, because of the sort of discourse around him when he signed for Liverpool...
Not Darwin then?
I think Darwin's been good as well, but I think there's a particular sort of role that Liverpool have to fill, and Gakpo has done it, or Hakpo as people seem to be calling him. It's the Firmino role, which is the most important role to Liverpool's entire system. And initially when he came, you could see that he isn't sure of whether he could play that role. He's got 6 goals, 2 assists. You probably didn't expect those numbers from a guy that was getting a lot of hate on social media, and people were saying he's the wrong signing. Why did Liverpool sign a striker? I think you're now starting to see the qualities that he's got that actually mirror Firmino. The ball does not leave his foot, and when he plays, Liverpool look much more fluid. His pressing's really good, and I think eventually Liverpool will end up playing with him through the middle, week in, week out, and figure out what else happens around him. So do think he's a fantastic footballer and really intelligent. I
think you were hoping he would hit the ground running, especially after having a decent World Cup, which didn't sort of formalise. But I mean, Liverpool kind of haven't formalised this year until the last few weeks. So there's definitely a cracking player in there. Last pick, you both went for this player. Again, this one I probably should have put in mine. Much better shout. Palhinha. What a season he has had for Fulham.
Absolute baller. Absolute.
I
don't know where.
Yeah. But that's, I mean, what a great way of describing. He's a baller and he is a monster. Yeah. You don't normally see that.
Which, that's the thing. It's the best of both worlds. Although he's a walking yellow card, right? And he obviously gets 4 tackles per 90, but he's an absolute baller as well. Yeah. I love a midfielder that's really combative and can play football as well. There's nothing like taking the ball off your opponent and then finding that right pass. And João Palhinha is that. And he's grown with this Fulham team that. And now a really good Fulham team. You never thought Fulham would be playing good football. Like, they're much better than Chelsea. And they're kind of floating.
Not difficult.
Yeah, not difficult. But who would have thought? No one at the start of the season, no one would have thought Fulham would be over Chelsea. And João Palhinha is a massive, massive reason for that. And they look like a totally different team without them.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think Harrison Reed said this in an interview. Said, we're going to have a go at every team this year, and they have done that. And if you go from sort of 1 to 11. It's a team where everyone's had a really good season, but I think you're right, that linchpin in the middle of Palhinha, both to sort of create and retain structure within the team, because you can trust him on the ball, but also the ability to go and get the ball sometimes. You had Harrison Reed, who's such a worker for them. He's had an incredible season for them as well, and I think generally there was a feeling that he wasn't a Premier League player, and I think he looks better, or initially got that level of confidence because of Palhinha being alongside him. And I think the biggest compliment I can give him is that I can't believe Liverpool didn't go and buy this guy at the start of the season.
Liverpool had a chance to get him, apparently, for 20 million. But I think there's certain players that come from countries like Portugal and they have to have a pit stop somewhere before they go somewhere else. I imagine this is the pit stop, where Liverpool weren't 100% sold on a £20 million midfielder and said, Fulham, you have him, we'll come take him in a year's time or a couple of years' time. Problem now is you're probably going to be paying 60, 70 million.
Absolutely.
Top player.
Yeah, so good. Guys, who have we missed out on this list? Let us know in the comments down below.
Thanks so much for watching ESPN on YouTube. And for more sports highlights and analysis, be sure to download the ESPN app. And for premium content and live streaming, subscribe to ESPN Plus.